So, good evening, everyone. Um, we're going to get started in just a few minutes. If you're here for the ASRG webinar, yes, you've probably come to the right place. You haven't been spammed some crazy link or whatever. But we're going to get started in a few minutes. Before we get started, we wanted to, just like the last few times, get some information from you guys as well. See where everybody's joining us from tonight or morning, wherever you might be. Um, so if you can see the map on the screen, you can go to polev.com/ASRG. And this is completely anonymous. We won't keep track of anything. It's just for fun. But if you can go sign in there, go show us where you're coming from, and it shows up on the map automatically. Ah, great. Someone figured it out. Looks like some smart person in Detroit. Glad to see it. So while we're waiting the first few minutes for everybody to get online, please go ahead, go to this poll.ev or polev.com/ASRG and just enter in your information about where you're coming from, what you think is going on in the automotive industry. It's just kind of fun for us to see who's joining from where and so on. So also you can participate in the webinar and also give feedback or ask questions through the live chat window. Let us know where you're coming from. Wow, we got some people starting to fill it in here. So where have we got here? Detroit, looks like Germany, some maybe Romania, maybe Tel Aviv. Looks like someone from California placed their thing wrong. Well, you'll get there. So, if you can quickly, if you're just joining us, quickly log into polev.com/ASRG and you can just kind of do a short survey. We're going to do it online. You can see directly on the screen who is joining from where. This is completely optional, anonymous, but also interesting for us to see who's where in the world. Very good. It looks like India, some people, even Singapore. No, it doesn't look like Singapore. I don't even know where that is, but yeah, Singapore. India. Very good. All right. So very cool. We also have some different questions. So not only your location, but you can also here answer why are you interested in automotive security? So this is the next question, and then if you can just select A, B, C, and you can see automatically on the screen kind of the results here and see what question is the highest priority, or not priority, but is getting the most feedback. So it looks like most of the people here are doing this in their day-to-day jobs. B is I'm not professionally involved, but I find automotive security very interesting. C, I call myself a security researcher. I would assume these are guys that are really doing some interesting stuff. A student studying is answer D, and I'm stuck at home because of coronavirus with nothing better else to do, so I'm learning something new. Looks like most of the people are responding, 60 something percent. This is my day-to-day job, which is really cool. I'm glad to hear that people are actually working and busy in the automotive security sector and, of course, attending ASRG. So we're just going to jump one more question. Um, what do you think is automotive security's biggest shortcoming? What's the issue that we need to address in automotive security? What's the biggest point that we should start looking at? And this helps us as ASRG members, as ASRG or automotive security researchers, helps us understand where we need to focus. So if you do have a point that you think we're just not paying enough attention to, or we need to make more of an effort, please let us know. Just type in your answers, and they'll come up directly on the screen as well. But you know, most of you guys didn't come here just to take a survey, so we'll probably move right into the presentation that we have for today. Um, First of all, welcome to ASRG. This is our third webinar in our series. We've had one every week so far for the past, 3 weeks. I'm very happy to have Dragos here with us today from Accenture. He's going to talk a little bit about the UNECE Cybersecurity Regulation for Automotive. This is something, it's not brand new in the industry, it's been in development for some time. However, it is going to change automotive security for us. So it's really important topic. And I'm really looking forward to what Dragos has to say and to get the information from him as well. But before we go into Dragos's presentation, a little bit about who the voice on the other end of this webinar is. So my name is John Hildreth. I'm responsible for product security at Porsche Engineering. I'm also the founder of ASRG, so Automotive Security Research Group. I've been in the field for, I don't know, 15 years now. I'm getting a little old, but always in the automotive field, not so much in the security field. But so that's just a little bit about myself. Contact me over LinkedIn or Zing or I don't think Facebook, but I mean, I'll show you later some links where you can keep in contact with us at ASRG. So very good. I want to, for those of you that are joining us that don't have any clue about what ASRG is, I'd like to give you a short overview. ASRG is the Automotive Security Research Group. We are a nonprofit. It's based in the US, but I have to admit I'm sitting here in Germany and have been living in Germany for some years now. But the corporation itself is in the US. Automotive Security Research Group is a nonprofit organization here dedicated to driving the automotive security industry. And we're trying to do this by concentrating on three main areas. The first one is knowledge. Basically, we all have the same goals when it comes to security in general. You know, we're trying to protect our customers' data. And those customers are also our families, our friends, our, you know, enemies, whatever it might be. We all have the same goals. We're trying to protect the data against unexpected usage. And by knowledge, this automotive security field is something that's very new in the industry, and relatively new. I mean, talking in the last few years, it started to develop. And there's an IT security industry which is really nicely developed. It's mature. It has some processes. It has a very nice structure to it. And then we have the automotive field, which actually has a very specific process of developing cars, suppliers, and expectations of OEMs. And these two processes, these two industries, actually, they used not to be so connected. And so now we have this kind of competency, this knowledge missing in the automotive field regarding IT security solutions. And the IT security field is also missing this automotive product development knowledge. And so this is what we're trying to do, is bring these two fields together, make sure that the people developing the solutions have the knowledge, that they have the information that they need to really do the job. So this is one thing, knowledge. The second thing is networking, to make sure that we're here as a community, we're trying to support each other, trying to make sure that if someone doesn't have the answer, that they do have a place where they can ask, that you can build these relationships with other members and understand, hey, listen, have you seen something like this happening? Or hey, we're having an issue over here. Do you have a other proposal for a solution or something? This is the idea behind this. It's not to share secrets. It's not to share intellectual property. The point is having somewhere to ask when you need additional support. Okay. And the last point here is collaboration. There are many things in the automotive security industry that actually doesn't make sense to be done by the OEMs or the suppliers or even by the government. And what we're trying to do is fill this gap of being able to work on projects that are supportive of the entire industry. Um, for example, something like intelligence sharing. Um, if everybody does their own intelligence thing and doesn't look at what's happening around them, we're going to have the same issues in every company, in every supplier, in every product, and the industry is not going to grow as fast as it should be. So collaboration allows us at ASRG and a nonprofit atmosphere to do research on specific topics and develop things that are not being developed at the OEMs, suppliers, or even at the government level. So just if you're interested, please contact us. I'll show you the links here in a minute. So ASRG, we started off as a little, I think it was 11 members at the beginning. Started in Stuttgart, Germany, and it has slowly turned into this over the past 2 or 3 years now, which makes me very happy to see such growth. I think this means also for us that we're bringing value to the members and also to the sponsors and entities and partners which are involved. So if you look around, we have 4 different locations in the US. We have Brazil, so Recife. We have Oxford in the United Kingdom. We have 4 different chapters in Germany, so Stuttgart, Munich, Berlin, Rheingebiet, so in the Frankfurt area. We have we have 3 now, so in Romania, Cluj, Napoca, Yosh, and then now Bucharest, just for the last few weeks. Actually, Dragos is the lead organizer at Bucharest. We have Tel Aviv, Cairo in Egypt, in India, Bangalore, Delhi, um, Tokyo, Shanghai, Singapore, Sydney. I mean, this thing makes me very happy to see. So if you haven't gotten in touch with a local chapter or something that's near you, please, here's the landscape. Get in touch with some of these guys. Um, we have 3,500 members. We have 20, I think 20 locations now. I think it might be 21. So it's a worldwide organization bringing the entire automotive security industry together. And this means we can actually discuss topics not only based on a certain region, so we have different communication methods and we can speak about, hey, what's going on in Australia? What have you seen in USA? What's happening in Tokyo? And this is really a nice value add. So how can you get involved with ASRG? So normally, outside of the Corona crisis that's going on right now, I would say let's attend a local meetup. So, we usually do face-to-face meetings. With coronavirus right now, we've changed to webinars and local virtual meetings. So if you want to, go attend, go join meetup and find your local chapter of ASRG and attend the meetings there specifically. If you don't see a chapter, you can always start a chapter. So this is something that's completely possible. We have a platform set up. It's very easy to do. So if you'd like to do this, please get in contact with me or one of the other administrators in the team. I'll show you the email in just a minute about where to send the email. Or you can join one of our projects that we currently have going on as part of our collaboration efforts. So how do you get involved? How can you get involved from your home? How can you communicate with the community? We set up two specific communication channels. One is Slack and the other is Telegram. So I know these communication platforms are probably not your favorite. Um, However, they're the best for us right now. And these two opportunities we have to communicate through Slack and Telegram. So here are the QR codes. Go ahead, take a screenshot, save it, or take your handy or your mobile phone or whatever it is, take a quick screenshot, add yourself to Slack or to the Telegram group. And what you'll get through these groups is in Slack, you can start having conversations with other people. We have different topics set up. And then in Telegram, you're going to see a lot of kind of just like news and different discussions about topics. So please join the communication platforms. It's there for you. It's to help increase the communication between the different locations. Very good. Um, well, ASRG is a free thing for its members. Anyone can sign up, anybody can be a part of ASRG. It's here for you. But we also do need people to support us. And so if you or your company, if you think maybe they would like to support ASRG or become a part of ASRG's projects or other initiatives, please send me an email at hello@asrg.io. You see it at the bottom there. And what ASRG can offer is basically we have we have all of our members are very motivated members, and they're all interested or working in the industry of automotive security, and which is very targeted advertising, as you might imagine. But there's global branding opportunities. There's access to exclusive content, post opportunities and find talent. These are just some of the advantages of being a sponsor of ASRG. But if you want to become a sponsor, if you have ideas about how to become a sponsor, what a partnership might be interesting, hello@asrg.io. Just send us an email. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you're interested to start a chapter, please also use the same email address, hello@asrg.io. We'll also get back to you, talk to you, set up a meeting, and see what really makes sense for you. So that's my little spiel about ASRG. I hope that wasn't too boring for you, because now we're going to get into the exciting stuff. We have Dragos on the line. He's going to show us a little bit about UNECE and new cybersecurity regulations for automotive products, which I'm very excited about. Dragos, thank you very much for being here, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, John, and hello to everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. I saw there is a really nice community across the globe, which is really good, as John was mentioning. Probably that's one of the biggest benefit of this community, that you get to know things and collaborate across the globe. So, John, I also want to start by thanking you and your team for what you're doing, for basically creating this let's call it group, or because right now I would say it's no longer a group. It started as a group, now it's more like a community. So thanks a lot for doing it. I know you're involved in a lot of other stuff, and this is draining a lot of your time, so thanks for doing it. I think from all of us in automotive security, that's a really good thing. I'll try to not to be very, let's say, boring with the regulation discussions, because usually they are not very spicy. So I'll try to bring some new stuff, and to look at this regulation from a different angle. I'll start with a couple of words about me and, of course, Accenture, my employer. I'm a security manager. I'm leading Central Europe and Greece automotive security practice. I'm also a member of Auto Isaac. I've been working in FCI. I'm still working, in fact, part-time for some of the clients from North America. And I'm a member of Auto Isaac, of ISACA, ASC2, EIPP, and since 2 weeks ago, as John was mentioning, I'm also chapter leader for ASRG in Romania, in Bucharest. So I also want to take the opportunity and try to recommend you to open as many chapters in other locations. I think that's a really good way to grow this community. As part of my experience so far, I had the chance to feed my passion about automotive security by working in different geographies and different OEMs. I've been working in US, in Europe, even in Asia, and I've been doing hands-on. I started with a lot of hands-on activities. I started with a lot of I think penetration testing were among the first things I was doing, because I was a pen tester on like application and IoT security, and then I also moved to this automotive area. So I was doing a lot around threat modeling, autonomous driving recently, of course, securing the overall product development life cycle. As I said, vehicle security testing, some governance and compliance, because it's something that you need to have in any organization. And recently, I've been, like in the last 2 years, I had a lot of interactions with Android OS in automotive, with third-party application adoption, with Google Automotive Services. So I would say a lot of exposure in this direction, even a couple of meetings and discussions with colleagues from Google on how to enhance from a security perspective their product. So this is who I am. I'll jump directly into with a heavy slide, but this is intended. The topic here is, okay, why do we need a regulation in automotive? And the answer, or the short answer, is that we have an increased threat vectors for connected vehicle. And in the picture that you see is basically the threat landscape for onboard and offboard components of a vehicle. So we are talking about threats coming to vehicle to infrastructure, or vehicle to vehicle, or coming from the backend, or coming from firmware over the air updates, or application over the air updates, or now when you are also able to connect your machine or your vehicle to your home through the Wi-Fi access point. There are also vulnerabilities that you need to take into account coming from your smart home. But then if you go a little bit deeper and you go on onboard components, as you know, there are a lot of possible entry points. The way it usually is, there is like a security gateway, or that's, let's say, from my experience, there is usually a security gateway that makes like a delimiter between the dirty side of a vehicle and the clean side of a vehicle. So on the dirty side, to call it this way, we have ECUs like infotainment, or even some telematics. But then on the clean side, we have ADIS, or body and control, or powertrain and other vehicle safety related ECU, right? So depending on the criticality of that ECU, there could be different security requirements, and of course different attack vectors. If I would be an attacker, right, what I would like to achieve would be to be able to control the powertrain, or the body and comfort, right? So in doing this, of course, there needs to be, you need to break a lot of layers of security. So this is what I intended to show here, that even though security is present in automotive, and to be honest, like 5 years ago when I started working in automotive, security was not really the biggest concern, or one of the biggest at least. Nowadays, this technological trend and opening up basically the vehicle led to also increased security awareness in the first part, and then also this was translated into security focus and security SMEs, and security budget for increasing the security, which I think we are on the right track. Next, I wanted to highlight the need for this end-to-end security, and we this is a like automotive value chain or supply chain. So we start from the left, from the research and development, and we go up to operation and monitoring. And you can see that the items highlighted in orange are basically the steps or the stages in this supply chain where security is crucial to be there. So we are talking about OT security, right? Manufacturing security. Nowadays, we see there is an increased need and request from the clients to secure also the manufacturing. We see an increased security demand in managing the third-party suppliers, because the idea would be that usually in big OEMs, they are not doing all the components, either hardware or software, by themselves. They are usually outsourcing this, right? So they have like a huge number of third-party suppliers. So now with this new regulation, and you will see in the following slides, they are now requesting that this third-party supplier should be managed from a security perspective by the OEM directly. So they need to have the right processes and technical controls to verify their suppliers. And of course, the message, overall message for this picture is that we need to, or we need to advise our employers, our clients, to introduce security at each stage during a value chain or during the supply chain. And this is a mindset that needs to change, right? Like a culture. We should not expect from tomorrow everything should be, white, or right, because this will not change over the night. We need to go with small steps, and I think these small steps are already done in the last couple of years. So we should be in a pretty good position. So that was more like a context and an introduction. Sorry for the long one. So this is basically the agenda, what I want to talk to you about. And I hope that this will be also a dialogue, because I want to start with a disclaimer, right? This UN ECE is a regulation that, as John said, the work on it started like in 2016, right? So it's not something really new. However, in the last year, and even like in the previous one, there were a really good progress in this direction. And if it weren't for coronavirus, I think this year we would have had UNECE published. Unfortunately, due to this new pandemic, which no one could have foreseen it, probably it is going to be published early 2021. But the reason why we are talking right now about it and not 2 years ago is because, as I said, in the recent timeline, it brought a lot of progress, and there are already drafts that were circulated inside UNECE about it, where they were trying to get feedback, they were trying to update based on the feedback they had. And again, there were a lot of progress recently, so that's why it's really worth talking about it, because if you're an OEM, right, you can be proactive about it. It's not like, okay, let me wait to see after it get published, and only after that I can take some actions towards getting a certification. No, as Accenture, we already were involved in some discussions with different OEMs, which were interested, and we were really happy about that. We were interested in understanding, okay, what's the scope of this UN ECE regulation? What's new about it? Tell me, how can I be compliant? Tell me, how can I prepare in advance for being compliant? Tell me, what are the liabilities? What happens if I'm not compliant? Tell me, what's the process, right? So there were a lot of questions coming from the OEM, which again, I really perceived it as a good thing, because they care about cybersecurity, right? So we already managed to go from an awareness level to a more like knowledgeable. So we are, our stakeholder are already knowledgeable and are planning to invest budget for to increase the security and to be compliant, of course. I'm going to talk about a high level description of this UN ECE. I'm going to talk then about a couple of requirements and something more specific, like a deep dive about this regulation. Then we're going to talk a little bit about this action plan for compliance. What are the real steps that an OEM needs to take in order to become compliant? And then just as a closing slide and discussion, the impact, what's the real impact on vehicle manufacturers? So how a manufacturer should perceive and should see this regulation. And again, as I said, if you have any questions, any topics, please write them into the chat. I will really be happy to discuss it. I know that some of you might even be part of UNECE forum and working group. So you may have like a really good knowledge, really good insight. So please step in, just add the question. Let's make it more like a dialogue. Let me also learn from what you know. I'm not God. I don't know everything about this regulation. Probably no one knows, because it's still a draft. But yeah, I really encourage you to ask questions to gain as much as possible from this meeting. UNECE WP, because basically this World Forum for Harmonize of Vehicle Regulation, which is called WP 29 in short, it's a group part of UNECE that is mandated with worldwide regulation for automotive. So we are talking here about two big components, part of this UNECE WP 29. We are talking about CSMS, which stands for Cybersecurity Management System, and SUMS, the Software Update Management System. So you will see in the presentation that this regulation covers both these topics, and you can get certification either for one of them or for both of them. So they are not really linked between them. Also, I wanted to mention that WP29 is a global forum. There are like 56 states, and for the scope in terms of vehicle types, we have vans, we have trucks, we have buses, we have agriculture vehicles, even non-road mobile machineries. And from the info I got from UNECE guys, they are planning to introduce into the scope also other types of vehicles and, let's say, machineries, because they are thinking to introduce this also to maritime sector or even to aviation at some point. But they need to have a certain level of uh, autonomy, and from an autonomous driving perspective, if they are level 3 or above, they will enter under the jurisdiction of this regulation. But again, this, some of the information that I will share with you are not necessarily published or official, and I will mention where something is still like under discussion, because the overall disclaimer is that some things, or this presentation and this interpretation, it's a point in time. Because today, I mean, for this I used, I think, the most recent draft. I think it's from February 2020, but maybe in 6 months from now, this presentation might have some updates required. One specific mention about US and Canada, they are part of UNECE, but when it comes to these regulations by WP29, they have the liberty not to recognize them. So they have, let's say, a special treatment. So to be honest, I'm not expecting, at least from the beginning, I'm not expecting US and Canada to be, let's say, forced to comply to this UNECE regulation. In terms of timeline, in 2020, as I said, it was initially planned, but probably it's going to go to 2021. And a couple of things about this approval and non-conformity. So the way this certificate of compliance is going to be awarded is by, there are like two ways. One, which are not optional, both of them are, let's say, mandatory. The first one is by just checking evidences from the OEM, and by evidences I mean like maybe even some test reports, or maybe some threat modeling reports, right, or maybe some requirements documents. So evidences that will show to these approval authorities that you've done your requirement. So you've done your due diligence in assuring security is present in overall vehicle life cycle. So that's one. But also the other one is by really testing the vehicle. So this approval authority can take one vehicle out of your let's say vehicle types, and for which you forwarded a request of this certificate of compliance, and try to test it and see whether the cybersecurity measures are really implemented. The regulations, we see them as mandatory in order for an OEM to place their vehicles on one of the countries in which the regulations are enforced, right? If that doesn't work, I mean, taking just two countries, for example, right? Let's take Germany and Romania. Both of them are part of UNECE, even the WP29. Let's say Germany will be compliant with UNECE at the country level, but Romania will not be, or will not be from the beginning. So what will happen is that OEMs from Romania, like Dacia, Renault, if they will try to sell cars in Germany, the German government might come and say, okay, I'm not allowing it because you don't have this security, you don't have this security certification, cybersecurity certification from UNECE, right? So you may face trade barriers and other types of headaches. So that's why I see this as a dominoes, right? So when this will be published, I think probably the biggest OEM in Europe will start adopting it, and everyone will then follow, because again, there is a big impact if you will not be doing it. Not talking also about the marketing and the brand perspective, right? Because it's something that you say that, okay, I have this nice vehicle, this nice model year that we have now in production, and it is cyber security compliant, it has cyber security certification, right? So even from a marketing perspective, I really think this will be promoted heavily, very heavily. Just one example, I think all of us know about Tesla and the tank that the cybersecurity tank that they promoted like a couple of months ago. So I really think it will have a pretty good and constructive impact. Last thing I wanted to mention is about this mutual agreement. And mutual agreement is basically the discussion between countries. So for the example that I gave before, Romania and Germany, if both of them will be compliant with UNECE, they will have this mutual agreement saying, okay, I'm trusting you, so you can bring your cars here. You are saying that they are cybersecurity resilient and certified, then I don't need to do anything else. So this is the mutual agreement about. And in the right, this small picture here is basically how it's going to look, how you are going to identify. This is like a marker. So this is how you are going to identify if a vehicle type has this UNECE certification. This is the regulation timeline. This is just the last 2 years. And yeah, because of Corona, as I said, probably it's going to be published in mid 2020. 21, sorry, but I just wanted to highlight that in the last 1 year and something, there were like a lot of activities done in order for us to have a regulation finally in automotive. A couple of words about how this UNECE regulation fits into existing, I would call it not necessarily regulation, but more like compliance standards landscape. I put here a couple of areas like vehicle safety, and we have a lot of bodies here that are doing, or standards that are trying to deal with this vehicle safety. Then vehicle security, we have here UNECE, we have the new ISO standard from ISO and SAE standard, the ISO 21434. We have also something from ENISA at European level, and it's called the Cybersecurity Act, and I also have a slide on that, because the Cybersecurity Act in 2018 was intended to be what UNECE is trying to be now. So was intended and was mandated by European Union to create this framework, standardized framework, not only at automotive level, but at ICT level. ICT, it's basically the industry communication system. So it's not only automotive, it's more like every smart product and service. They didn't do a really good job, if you ask me, so far. But yeah, again, we have a dedicated slide for that. US, the Auto ISAC. I know there are discussions for creating Auto ISAC also in Europe, and also the one from North America, this National Highway Traffic Safety Administrator. Also, we have here some risk management frameworks like Octave, the Tara, Heavens, Hara, Evita. So here are all the examples that are really used in automotive. A couple of process standardization and improvement, and of course, privacy in automotive. It's about GDPR in Europe and CCPA, Consumer Privacy Act, California Consumer Privacy Act from US, which was or is being adopted also in other states right now. And I think the trend is to become like a federal law, which will be eventually applicable across entire North America. So this is the slide I was telling you about. So this is the interpretation, and I think interpretation, it's a very good word, because again, this is a point in time. This might change, and this is based on our understanding as Accenture. As I said, there is this in ENISA Cybersecurity Act, which in 2008, 18 and 19, they were mandated by European Union to create this standardized framework and some cybersecurity certification for a broad range of products and services. These services and products, they are called ICT, information communication technologies. So if you can see this point, I think this is pretty important. ENISA mentions that it is important to avoid duplicating efforts in certain sectors where a certification process is under development, and they are mentioning the UNECE. So basically, interpretation would be like, don't mess with what UNECE is doing. So if they already started doing, and we know, or they also know that it's in a pretty advanced state, don't try to do something to overlap what they are doing. So in a nutshell, the interpretation, our interpretation would be that UNECE will come first in a head-to-head race with ENISA Cybersecurity Act. And the reason are basically the ones that I mentioned you so far. UNECE is basically focusing only on automotive, at least this WP29. So again, they are in a better position to achieve this. And I don't see at this point, uh, let's say, overlaps or jurisdiction concerns between UNECE and ENISA Cybersecurity Act. So next, I'm moving a little bit to this deep dive into the UNECE. You will see that some of the slides will be or pretty heavy, but I will not go in detail. It's more to show you that they are really talking serious. So they are really taking this regulation seriously, because so far, we were used to best practices or standards or recommendation that were kind of in the air, right? They were telling you, you need to use encrypted communication between onboard and backend system, right? So that's pretty broad. That's not really specific. Or you need to have digital signature for on top, or integrity check for your firmware over the air update, and that's it, right? So what UNEC is trying to do is to be a little bit more specific, to bring some specific threats and controls, like really name the controls that you need to have let's say in a vehicle, but still give you some flexibility on how to implement them. And I think they are smart, right? Because they are doing this because you cannot tell that in 2 years AS 256 will not be broken, or RSA 1024, right? So right now, if you are telling you need to have this protocol of encryption, or to use this type of let's say algorithm, in 2 years from now this might change, and it's not really good that you need to maintain so heavily and to change this so heavily, this certification requirement. So that's why they are also keeping their level of flexibility, which I think is good. So these are the principles that we see mandatory for a cybersecurity operating model. So we are talking about, first, like business centric. We are talking about enterprise wide. We are talking about an extended ecosystem coverage, right? We are talking about those third party suppliers, and for which you need to include in your, from now on, you need to include, if not already, in your security strategy. We're talking about being agile. We are talking about even better than agile, being DevSecOps, right? We are talking about the technology enabled. And the way I perceive security, not necessarily in automotive, but just as a general principle, we don't need to be bottlenecks. We don't need to be those guys that are pointed out and to be the guys that are hated, right? Say, oh, this guy is also going to bring me again some headache. No, the way at least I try to do it with my clients and my colleagues is to enable and help them to achieve what they need, but in a secure way. Because to be honest, the thing what drives the business is at some point the client and the company objectives and goal. It's not security, unless we are talking about a company that produces security products, but it's not the case. So going back, these are the drivers. We don't need to be there and act like, okay, we are the most powerful there, and this product is not going to go in production if I say no, I have so much power. No, that's probably a bad approach. So you need to enable, you need to collaborate, you need to act as a team. That's some things that I learned from my past experiences, and it worked pretty well. Then a couple of things about synergies between this CSMS and SUMS, and again, these are cybersecurity management system and software update management system. These are the two new namings, let's call it this way, that this UNECE brought. And what's interesting, because we received some questions from clients, and probably some of the slides here are as a response to the questions and problems that some of our clients had when we were talking with them about UNECE. So one of them was, okay, but how is this CSMS and SUMS going to interact with my risk management system or with my information security management system, right? So we see this as a three step or a three parts. One is security from process perspective. So what we have in the left is security from a process and governance point of view. Then we also need to have security from a product perspective, and here we are talking about secure product development lifecycle or secure software development lifecycle. It depends which components you are using. uh, Sorry, and last but not least, recently or more recently, we are also talking about adopting the traditional IT tools and controls to adopt them also in automotive, also in embedded. And here we are talking about new generation firewalls. We are talking about IPS and IDS. We are talking about CM. So I think I can count them on my on the fingers from my one hand. The clients that we have, which have this VSOC or vehicle SOC, right? And this is something, let's say, moving into the right direction. We are bringing all of this also into the vehicle, and I think they are really needed, because what's the goal here? From one is, okay, create secure vehicle right now for our clients, but also the other way, the other goal is this technological trend and to pave the road to autonomous driving. So if you want to reach that stage, which again some companies already are on the right track, I think Waymo is a really good example. They have some types of vehicle that even reach like almost level 5 from a autonomous point of view. But again, we need to, all the industry needs to make some efforts to get there. So how is this UNECE different compared to other automotive regulations? So I have some splits, and I think this is a really good slide, in the sense that it summarizes very well what are the new things compared to other regulations. So I will take, like, I will go on CSMS first. So probably the one of the most important thing is that they separate the technical and process requirements. So they are providing basically different requirements, not necessarily different, because at some point they overlap, but separately requirements for having the right processes in place, and also the specific technical requirements to secure both onboard and off-board vehicle. And they even have different certification, cybersecurity certification for these two. So you need first to get the OEM level, to get first the CSMS certification, which is from a process perspective, you will see on the following slide. And only after that, after you have this process cybersecurity certification across the entire OEM, then you can apply for specific vehicle types. You can apply to say, okay, for this model year and this, or maybe even this group of vehicles, I want to apply for a CSMS certification. But again, the prerequisite is the process one. So you will see that these are like two different things. Then they are asking for increased focus on this TARA, this threat analysis and threat assessment and response analysis across the production stages. So TARA, or threat modeling, let's call it also this way, you need, it's not one-time activity, and that's what they are saying. Guys, you need just, you do at the design stage, you do a threat modeling and you're done. No, what they are saying, you start doing it at the design phase, but then the output, you use the output from this TARA as input for penetration testing or any other type of security testing, right? And then what you do, based on the results from the pen testing, you are updating this TARA and you are keeping it like a live document. And then you are maintaining that TARA even after production. And whenever you have like a security incident, maybe, or you are doing some software over the air update as part of a security incident or any other incident, and you know that some other components from the TARA were affected, so you need to go back and change those and rescore those possible vulnerabilities. So this is what they are saying. Then they also have an increased focus on securing the entire product development life cycle. So not only, I don't know, pre-production phase or not only production, they have a really good focus on the post-production phase. So they are saying, guys, you need to have the right tools or processes in place to monitor your vehicle once they are on the streets. You need to do it. You need to do it either, I don't know, with a VSOC. Maybe they're not saying this is coming from me, but some possible solution. You can have some VSOC. You can have a really good system that will manage the software updates over the air. So you need to have this. Then they require some specific technical controls. I will show you in the following slides. We have a couple of details there. As I said, they mandate monitoring and incident response and high focus on securing and controlling data at rest and data in transit. I know this is, in automotive, we are not really concerned about privacy, or we weren't, right? The major concern was safety. That was the only concern so far. I may be operational and of course financial, but privacy was not really a big thing. And with this regulation, it becomes a big thing. So what they are realizing is that the data is very powerful. So customer or consumer data becomes very powerful, like in all use cases. Automotive is just one use case, but at a global level, the trend is, okay, I need to monetize this data. So what OEMs can do is even monetize this data that they can collect from the customer. Of course, there are some privacy concerns if they are doing it in the right way, but yes, they can do that. It's something that a lot of the OEMs are starting thinking about. Okay. Then going a little bit on the SUMS, again, also mandate specific processes. There is this split. Then you need to update the software during the entire vehicle life cycle. So you need to ensure, and on this topic, to be honest, UNECE is not very specific. So this is one point that is not yet closed. Like the numbers of years after the production, after the vehicle is on the street, the numbers of year you need to ensure, let's say, some sort of warranty, right? There is something at European level that says 10 years, but there isn't something that was harmonized and agreed across UNECE. So again, this is a big open point for them. They are also saying, okay, we need to bring a unique software identifier. It's called RxS-Win. And the whole concept behind it is, okay, we know some OEMs are already doing this, let's call it ECU identity, or even mutual, which is used basically in mutual authentication. Or they're also doing some point blockchain. Maybe they are ensuring identity by the use of blockchain. Again, there are probably just just POCs so far, but there are a lot of technologies in this sense. What this brings, like as a new thing, is, okay, you have software identifiers in more like in, let's say, 10 ECUs or 5 ECUs. um, Sorry. What you need to have is one single software identifier at the vehicle level. So this is the let's say the concept behind this RxSWIN. You need to have only one identification number at the entire software stack of the vehicle, which can be like an aggregated or can be aggregated between the different ECU identities, if you want so. Again, they also require process to inform the user about the update. I think this was somehow already present, but not that specific. They also require some documentation. So these approvals authorities, they are going to request you to send data about the vehicle's software. So you need to have like a real-time situation about, okay, I have 1 million vehicles that are using version 9. I have 500,000 that are using version 10, right? So all of this information, these local or national authorities needs to be aware about them. And of course, the last one, in case of a urgent update, the OEM needs to do like a risk-based judgment whether the update should be issued or not. This is a broad statement and probably a pretty complex one, because this judgment can be good or bad, right? And if you're pressed by time, yeah, it doesn't help, right? But again, they are taking also this scenario of a 0-day vulnerability. So what do you need to do? And their recommendation is, guys, use your judgment, but somehow we recommend you patch it, and you need to rely on to have the right processes in the back, because the main thing, or the main constraint I see here, is basically to have some dependencies. This software that you are bringing may have some dependencies on other features, either hardware or software, right? So when you bring it and you don't have enough time to test everything and like do this integration test, you may have some problems, right? And that's, let's say, understandable. Okay, a couple of principle, pretty high level. These are the main principle of CSMS. I think some of them I mentioned. This slide is in fact used to show some highlights on the next slide. So ISO 21434, it's also this new standard from ISO and SAE. And what I wanted to highlight basically is that UNECE is using this ISO standard as a baseline. So it's fully aligned with this standard. And as you can see, these red squares, whatever is basically in the left of them or right of them, are the categories that are part both from UNECE and ISO 21434, right? So again, there is a pretty close alignment, because we receive a lot of questions around, okay, we are talking about UNECE, but what about ISO, the new ISO? How are they overlapping? Who should we I don't know, care more? Which should we take into consideration? The answer is they are very similar, and UNECE did not reinvent the wheel, or at least they collaborated with ISO and SAE colleagues in order to create something that, it's not brand new or doesn't overlap, or they are not saying you need to go left and the other ones you need to go right, right? So that's a really good thing, because you can achieve both compliance. If you want to go on the UNECE path, you will be easily able to achieve also ISO compliance. Probably there are some different flavors, but in a big picture, you will be able easily to be compliant with both of them. So let's jump a little bit on CSMS. So as I said, there are these two components, right? So on the right, we have these CSMS requirements. So these are more from a process perspective. And then we have the vehicle type requirements, and these are the security technical controls. On the right, I just highlighted a couple of topics, like some summary from their requirements, from process requirements, and the same I did on the left. And I also put here a note, I think I mentioned it before, a specific type approval, right? And by type approval, I mean a vehicle type, because again, you need to have first at the OEM level these CSMS requirements, because it's from a process perspective. After you get it, you can apply, it's called this vehicle type certification. You can apply with a vehicle specific, with a specific vehicle time, to get this certification per vehicle type. So you cannot have this type approval without without being CSMS approved. So on the right, we have processes required to managing responses to cyber attacks, managing properly the risk identification, assessment, and treatment, overall security management processes, or the management of external suppliers and service providers from a security perspective. On the left, when it comes to security or technical requirements, we have basically whatever we developed as process, you need now to apply it, and you need now to make proofs that, okay, I have the right risk processes, the right risk methodology, but these are the proofs that I apply this methodology on my vehicle type. Then you also need to demonstrate these implemented security controls. And again, there are two ways they will require you to demonstrate this. One way is by doing testing of a vehicle. The other way is by the evidences you gathered during this, let's say, production of that vehicle type. Then they will also look about the identification of vehicle critical areas. And something we are recommending to the OEMs, to our clients, is that, guys, don't rely solely on the requirements that UNECE is saying, or the critical areas that they are saying. You need to do a threat modeling on your own, because they need to have something harmonized, right? They need to have something that is standard for all the OEMs. But maybe other OEM, like, I don't know, just give one example, BMW, they may have some specific particularities and maybe some specific services that no one else has, right? So don't just rely on whatever is standard, whatever is this UNECE, and say, okay, I'm compliant, so I'm going to apply for this certification. No, you need to do your own threat modeling. You need to do, especially if you have customized part or like new services, or maybe even like critical services. And the last point is, of course, demonstration of the fact that you perform testing. Recommended is penetration testing on the vehicle. As I said, these are really like the security threats, like these big squares. These are like categories, and into the right, these small things are the associated security controls that the regulation is requesting. Of course, these are more like, you know, some summary of them, but just wanted to point it out. And there are like 2 slides, you see. uh, what they are bringing new is that, okay guys, we have these big areas, big threat areas. They have even a split between backend threats and onboard threats. So they have these big areas, and then we say, okay, you need to have for these threats. And again, even for the threat, they have more details, but it wouldn't be able to put everything on a slide. And they are saying, okay, in order to be able to protect from these threats to be exploited, you need to have these associated security controls. So as I said, there are like a lot of security controls that should be, or they are mandated by UNECE to be implemented. Jumping to SUMS, the same. We have exactly the same logic. There is this SUMS requirement. You need to, it's more from a process perspective. You need to be SUMS compliant before you can request a vehicle type certification. The same, like the main things from a process perspective, you need to inform, to have the right processes to inform the user about the update. You need, very important, to have the right process to ensure safety and security of the update. Something about processes to validate maybe some compatibilities and dependencies, and updating and maintaining software version. On the left, when it comes to technical requirements, we have again this RxWin for managing software version and managing basically the software identity. You need to have the right security controls to protect against compromising of this over-the-air update, and any over-the-air update should not impact the user, or the user safety specifically, or the vehicle operation. The same, there are a couple of areas that more like recommendation and controls that the UNECE regulation is mandating. So we are talking about some vehicle location that you need to have it during the update, safe execution of the over-the-air update, post-update execution, like user needs to be informed, over-the-air execution update, which should happen normally without any operational impact, security requirements for updates, and also requirements for evidencing the update process. As I said, you need to document what you are doing with this software update. You need to send all the information to the local authorities, or to the right approval authority, in national approval authority. Very short about RxWin. This is again the software identification. They put it in a specific chapter, this, and they are treating it pretty seriously. And they are creating a couple of requirements. Some of them, probably some of the most interesting ones, is like, of course, needs to be unique. It needs to be unique also per UN regulation, should be protected against unauthorized modification, so should have integrity protection. Depend on the operating system. You can have this either in the form of like private public key, and you store the private key in hardware trust anchor, and you can have some hash of that private key to use it, and so on. So there are a lot of ways you can achieve it. You can even go, if you want, and if you want to go even more seriously, you can even fuse it into the hardware, right? You can even fuse it in some ECU. You can yeah, you can put even like the hash of the key if you want to be even more secure. But again, I think it depends a lot on how secure and how feasible, because there might be some other constraints like budget, hardware, software. But there are ways of doing this, of course. Moving towards the action plan for compliance. So these are the systems and components that are in scope of the CSMS regulation. We are talking about the external interfaces, like here or here. We are talking about communication with the backend. We are talking about communication through cellular, or we are talking about communication through Wi-Fi. So now it's really like a trend to have this Wi-Fi client on maybe on your head unit. It can connect to your home access point, right? So there are a lot of things. So you can even do firmware over the air through the Wi-Fi. But of course, different conditions applies. But and then you also have the onboard part with the infotainment system, which is intended to be here as to be like on the dirty side. And I call it dirty side not because it's dirty, but because there are users, like it can be manipulated. It receives input from a user, right? So you cannot trust the user. I don't trust the user. For me, the user is can be equal to a hacker. So that's why I call it the dirty side. Um, so these are all the systems in scope of CSMS. As I said, there are these two types of certification. And for the CSMS certification, again, this is more from a process. First, what you need to do, so these are like, I would say, pretty clear steps, at least in my mind. First, what you need to do, OEM needs to implement the CSMS, meaning the processes, right? Then the national or regional authority, or we even have these technical services which can be named by these national authorities that are coming into at your OM, and they are assessing that you did according to UNECE certification from a process perspective. After that, what if everything is okay, you get this certificate, CSMS certificate of compliance, it's called. I also have a picture in the appendix, I will show you. And it has a maximum validation period of 3 years. After that, you need to renew it. After you get this, you go to the next step. Next step is vehicle type certification, right? So this is again the technical requirements, and you can request this for a specific vehicle type or model year and so on. So the same, like you need to develop the vehicle architecture, implement everything that is requested. Someone from either technical service or national authority comes and assess this, and they are issuing a certificate of conformity for this vehicle type. So this is, let's say, the process. Very similar to SUMS. This is basically the system. These are basically the system and components in scope. Of course, we are talking about less system compared to CSMS. And we're talking mainly about the backend, where it and the communication with the onboard components. We are talking about firmware over the air, application over the air, or even maps over the air. And probably in the future there will be even other things over the air that will come. We have here the same, like in this situation, 3 steps. The additional step is the software identification requirements, the RxWin component that I was mentioning you before. And exactly the same logic is used to get the SUMS certification, right? So first you implement the processes, someone comes, validates that you did a good job, you get this SUMS certificate of compliance. After that, you can apply with a vehicle type to get this certification, and you get this certification issued. There are also, as part of the vehicle type certification, you also have this software identification requirements, which, yeah, you need to be compliant. They are not saying you need to do in a specific way. they are letting the OEM, let's say, flexible and say, okay, guys, you can use your own method for vehicle identity, like software identity, but it needs to respect some conditions. Now, I know everything looks good on a paper, right? Or maybe not. But what I wanted to highlight is that this can be easily translated into some specific activities, and this is the intent of this slide. So the way we see it, and the way, again, as Accenture, we take it with our clients. We encourage them to do as this maturity assessment. I know sometimes, when some consultants are coming and I say, okay, you need to do this maturity assessment, blah blah blah. They seem like really consulting stuff. That's true. But in this situation, you cannot go without knowing what you have, right? So you need to start with this maturity assessment of the entire, let's call it, security operating model you have. Then some other folks which have the knowledge about UNECE needs to tell you, okay, what's the scope? So what do I need to do? What are the specific requirements? So this is basically the scope. Then again, you can also have some support during the implementation. Either we are talking about process or we are talking about technical controls. So from let's say from one end to another, these are the short activities you can do in order to achieve. And if you would ask me, Dragos, how long would this take, right? This doesn't have, an answer that would fit all the organization, because it depends a lot on the complexity, on the size of the organization. You can do this maturity assessment maybe in 2 weeks, or maybe you can do it in 4 weeks. Again, depends on the size and complexity, depends on the security team that is there already. Then you can do this implementation or the gap implementation of the items that you found as gaps. You can do from a range starting with 3 months up to 6 months or 9 months. But again, depends a lot what you find as gaps and how much work you have to do in order to get there. We also developed an automotive security operating model. This is something that we as Accenture, we are let's say implementing at our clients. We developed an operating, because there are a lot of operating models, security operating models, but we didn't find one that would be really fit to the automotive industry and would really be up to date, to say so. So we created one. It's not like we reinvent the wheel from scratch, but we brought some I would say pretty good ideas. And of course, this is just, let's call it like a high level summary, but we do have way more details, like what's standing behind the strategy, what's standing behind the data security, what are the subcategories, to say so. But again, we have here split into like the governance part with CSMS and SUMS, and even the autonomous driving capability development. So UNECE is also developing some standards and some regulation in this area. So our clients can also ask, like, okay, I want also to be compliant maybe with this autonomous standard. Then we go to the product ecosystem, where we have all of this. I think some pretty important ones are OT security, data security, supplier and third parties, secure monitoring. Again, a couple of things that needs to be there, and maybe a couple of years ago they weren't there. And last point I wanted to mention is the DevSecOps methodology. So we are proposing an agile methodology. So we are proposing to move from this, waterfall, which is 1990 based, and we are proposing to move even beside agile, to move to a DevSecOps methodology. What we also did, we mapped this operating model to NIST, because we are saying on the previous slide that you need to start with the maturity assessment. So this mapping to these 5 categories from NIST: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, will bring this activity, or will make this activity of doing the security maturity way easier. So last topic, it's about the impact this regulation brings on the vehicle manufacturers. So our conclusion is that all manufacturer, automotive manufacturer, will be impacted in different ways, of course. And these ways depends on size and complexity, depends on awareness and knowledge about this regulation, what it needs, what's the scope. So you need some really good guys on security to tell you, you need to do this, this is the scope, if you do that you will become compliant. Because if you're not doing this in an efficient way, you may invest money and time, and you will end up right in 2021 ready to get the certification. The national authority will come and say, oh, that's not good, oh, that's not really good, right? So that's one scenario. The other scenario, you bring external consultants to help you with this. Then we talk about third-party suppliers and service providers dependencies. That's also one big impact. Then we also talk about, or it depends on the culture and mindset when it comes to this product development life cycle. And last but not least, it depends a lot on the maturity of your security colleagues that you rely on in your organization. So that's it from my side. Sorry for the long time, but it's a really heavy topic. So now I'm open to questions and to dialogue.
So, first of all, Dragos, thank you so much for the very extensive, very informative presentation. Really nice. If anyone has questions about UNECE, please write them in the live chat, and then I will dictate them over to Dragos. But I did write down a few questions, Dragos. So,
I was afraid of that.
so actually, CKB was asking, hey, what are the general differences between the ISO and the WP29? But this was also
Mhm.
before you actually showed
Yes.
the
Yes.
slide. Um, but I think in general, the WP29 is more regulation based. It's
Hmm. Yes.
removing the right to sell vehicles. And when we talk about the ISO is still okay, it's still a guideline, right?
Yes, that's a really good answer. So there are like two perspectives. One is, let's say, from a legal, and it's exactly what you mentioned, right? You are not obliged to follow a standard or a guideline, but you are obliged to follow a regulation if that is accepted as a regulation at your national state, right? And that's one. But also then from a, let's say, content wise perspective, I would say the main difference is that UNECE, let's say, I would say UNECE contains ISO 21434, and it has a couple of areas that even goes a little bit further, and it's a little bit more specific. Because if you remember, I was showing you these specific technical requirements, which were pretty heavy slides. Sorry for that. But in ISO, you don't really have them. They are like more, they stick at the standard and guideline level. For the regulation, a regulation by definition needs to be something precise, because there should not be any room for interpretation, right? So that's the
Hmm.
challenge in the same time, and also the benefit of a regulation.
Okay. Yeah, totally agree. Okay, the next question we have, Brandon, Dragos, have you seen widespread adoption of WP29? And where do European automakers stand with respect to WP29? It seems to be relatively shrugged off in the US today and remains a little hard to enforce.
Hmm. That's
What's
a good
your
question.
opinion?
Yeah, and John, if you want to step in or provide your point of view, because I know you're also a member of UNECE, so you can, as beside me, you can, yeah, provide your view as well. So from my point of view, as I said, US is a pretty particular case. US and Canada, they don't really want to be, like to be forced. They are saying, okay, if we want, we will take this regulation into account. If we don't, we will not, right? So that's one thing. Second, so that's why I don't think it will have a big focus in US, at least not in the beginning. What I'm expecting is that in a timeline, I don't know, of 6 months, maybe 1 year, or maybe 2 years after it get published in Europe and other countries like China or Australia, the US will also follow. They will see that, okay, it's not so hard to adopt it, or it doesn't really bring so many changes. We should not fear this, right? And it's a good thing. You can do marketing, blah blah blah. You can get a lot of benefits also, because it's always a question, what's in it for me, right? Like an automotive OEM, you are asking, okay, why should I do that? I mean, it's not mandatory for me, right? So what are my benefits? But going back to the European landscape, the answer is yes. We received, I will not name the, of course, the clients, but we received from four, maybe five clients, like big OEMs. We call them like diamond clients for us. Big OEMs, we received some more or less advanced question and discussions about UNECE. So we saw there is a pretty big interest and demand, and we see that in the follow-up month this will even grow bigger. Of course, we have, coronavirus, which heavily impacted the automotive industry, unfortunately. So a lot of our, we were really eager to start doing. We were with some clients like pretty close, and Corona came. Everything, like factories were put on hold, and so on. A lot of pretty other impacts. So we had to stop.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Then there's one other question here. Marius is asking about how are the ISO and IEC 15288? So these are system
Mhm.
engineerings or systems lifecycle processes for aerospace and automotive functionality safety observed for the UNECE WP29. Has the ISO 15288 been partially adopted? So maybe first of
That
all, do you know this ISO
Yeah,
standard?
that's a question that closed me. I will not. I'll be honest. I don't really know. I think I read it at some point, but I wouldn't really like to give you an answer which is not accurate. I would say, I mean, if you ask me, they probably try to align with the standards, existing standards and guidelines that affected either the security and say or safety, but I don't have any more specific answer.
Okay. Um, there was also another question about, we have this GDPR thing in Europe, and it's supposed to protect the privacy of its
Mhm.
citizens. Um, how is the WP29, or what is the differences, or how does it relate, the WP29, to the GDPR regulations?
Mhm. That's also a good question. So, um, because WP29, again, it's not at European level, right? And it's a regulation, and they are planning to create something globally at some point, right? They cannot be specific to some regional regulation. So that's why I think one of the items that I put there was increased focus on data at rest, protecting the data at rest and data in transit, right? So what they are doing compared to, sorry, to other regulations and even standards, they are specifying a couple of requirements on how you need to protect your data. They don't really mention anything about, like, you need, like in GDPR, right? In GDPR you need to be very careful about user consent, you need to be very careful about anonymization of data, about other types of constraints. In UNECE, in UNECE, these are not like very detailed. And again, the reason is there might be things that might contravene in one region compared to another. Like in one region you might have like more strict rules from a data privacy perspective, in another one you may have less. So they didn't, I think they didn't want to, to create confusion here.
Okay. Do you think the WP29 or the new cybersecurity regulation is going to protect the privacy of the users, or in this case, the
Yes.
drivers?
Yes, maybe not at what GDPR is mandating right now, but you know how UNECE goes. It says you are going to implement or you are going to accept UNECE regulation, but in the same time, existing regulation like GDPR should not contravene, so should not overlap. So if there are GDPR regulation in Europe, you need to be GDPR compliant, and then you can also be UNEC compliant. So you cannot say I'm just UNEC compliant and I don't need to be GDPR compliant. And the same applies for US, right? Like in California, the same. If they will have at some point the UNECE, you also need to care about the existing regulation.
Okay, great, thank you. I do have one more question for myself. I mean, we talk a lot about UNECE, but this doesn't cover the US and it doesn't cover China, which are two of the biggest markets for the automotive industry.
Mhm.
Um, what should we expect from the US or from China?
Good question, and I would really want to foresee the future, but I don't. No, but I'll try to tell you what I think. So of course there are, China. We all know they have a special treatment in the sense that they are a little bit more closed, right? They have a different, let's call it, culture. So they are not very open to follow some global regulation, right? But what is going to be the game changer? They will be forced to do it. And why is that? Is because they have a lot of OEMs like, I don't know, Hyundai, Honda, and others that are basically going. They will want to sell cars in Europe, right? So at least partially, like their European parts of the company, they will need to be UNECE compliant because they will want to sell cars to the countries that are basically part of this agreement of UNEC, and the same applies to US as well. And that's why I brought at some point the point that what's in it for them as OM, right? If you, and this can be a positive thing or a negative thing that can drive you to go to this UNEC. In this situation, it will be a negative thing from them. For them, it will be even a brand impact at some point, or it can also be this financial impact because they will face trade barriers when they will want to sell their cars.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dragos, for the presentation and the question and answer session. Um, would you like to say anything quickly in closing?
Yeah, a couple of words. Thanks a lot again for the opportunity. I really think this automotive security is something that will be very big in the future. It's already big. I think it will be bigger. And I really encourage all of you that were in this meeting and listen to us to ask questions, to collaborate better, to yeah, create like new hobbies around this. And if you need anything from my side at any point, just contact me. I'm available. You have my email. It can be any question. I don't think there are any stupid questions. So at any point I'm here to help. We'll also organize something locally, but thanks again for the opportunity, and for me it was pretty interesting discussion. Hopefully also for you.
Yeah, from my point of view, it was really a nice presentation. Thank you so much. Um, I just would like to inform everybody next week we will also have another webinar. We will have, I think it's titled Lessons Learned for Automotive Navigation After the Tesla GPS Hack. And we will have some guys from Regulus Cyber here. They will be giving us an overview of what we need to learn from this GPS hack. So another interesting webinar next week from ASRG. Looking forward to it. Once again, Dragos, thank you very much. And guys, have a good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you might be in the world. Okay?
Thank you. Bye bye,
All
guys.
right.
Bye. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.